right now. Any questions?
Yes, with no disrespect intended, Dr. Malachi Z York, I would like to ask some questions. Can you please explain this two Master Farad Muhammads, one being an Arab and one being a Caucasian, and his apology from 1990 from the Ansar Law community? And what's with Minister Khalid and his comments? Please, I just want you to explain it.
That's a very, very interesting subject. I hate to touch on it because there's been so much controversialness about it, especially in cases of me. It's all right when everybody else talks about the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, or everybody else talks about Master Farad Muhammad. I mean, when Siraj Wahaj, who was known as Jeffrey X, broke off and spent lecture after lecture and traveled around the Arab world talking about the nation of Islam, and Ms. Louis Farrakhan, nothing was done to him. I mean, nothing was said about him. I mean, the brother Bilal Phillips, before he even started talking about or writing a book about me, was spending a lot of time talking about the nation of Islam and trying to tear them down and writing books about them. Nothing was said about him. The nation of the 5% for the gods of earth now, a brother from inside there called Clarence 13S breaks away from them. You listen to this? He breaks away, takes over the position of God, calls himself Allah, Puddin, organized a whole little group of young Puerto Ricans up in the Bronx, start a whole new thing called the 5%, taking out the lessons of Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And I mean, you know, his followers are running around right now on the internet, and they're brothers and they're relating to them, talking about they're relating and building together. But me, it's a personal thing always with me. I'll tell you why. It goes back a long way. I intimidate people because I deal with facts. And that bothers me. But you people want facts, don't you? What else is there but some facts and truth? I may not be liking what I do, but I got to teach the truth, don't I? What else am I here for? But all these other people, they want to presuppose the truth and play games, gather lots of people that look good, put on costumes and look good. But what about what they have to say about your soul and the plans of the devil and what he planned to do with you? They ain't talking about that, are they? Constantly they repeat to you, white man did this, white man did that. We got more black devils than there are white devils circulating around this right now. I mean black devils. I mean, I don't mean no spook to sop beside behind the door. I mean brothers with afros infiltrating organizations and working with you, smiling in your face, praying with you, and they are the devil. I'm not just talking about infiltrators working on FBI and OCI. I'm not talking about that stuff. I'm talking about the nigga who walks around causing problems. He don't know nothing. All he's trying to figure out a way is make some money off some people. He ain't out to sacrifice his life. I call myself a lamb. Why? Because I, for years, was hated. I went up against everybody. I didn't always speak out. I was just one of the brothers there teaching and trying to raise a new nation. But then they made a major mistake of touching on my personal life. And that's when I started coming out. And now that I've come out, I'm hated by everybody. It's not going to stop me. That's why you call yourself a lamb, because you know you're a sacrificial man. You take that chance. I'm not going out there and talk about this. Because all the life women said, don't mess around, talk about this government and what you go, because you ain't going to do nothing to America. Stop dreaming. You ain't got nothing you can do to the powers that be. But you can do something for yourself, and that's what he did. Said, do something for yourself. So that's a very touchy subject. And I can get more detail into it. I'm saying if you really want me to, y'all want to hear more about the Farad story? Because what happens is, last time when I tried my best to be a nice guy and break away in 1990 and write an apology, I got slapped in the face for it. Verbally, I got called names. He don't know what he's talking about. He's confused. One minute he's Turkish, next minute he's Syrian, next minute... Hey, I was with Sheikh Dawood Ahmed Faisal since I was 12 years old. Brother Omar took me in the State Street, and Sheikh Dawood gave me a card, and he signed it, and I still have it. And that was 1957, when most of these niggas either wasn't born or didn't even know what Islam was. They still was in the Christian church worshiping a white Jesus. Some fool gonna say in 1965, I took my shahada in State Street. Sheikh Dawood gave me my name. Isa Abdullah Ibn Mubakar Muhammad. He gave me that name. That was one of his relatives' names. His father's name was Talib Abu Bakr. People don't know what they're talking about. That was way back in June 21st, 1957. Go back and get the records from 143 State Street. They're still there. And you'll see my signature. You'll see Sheikh's signature. I was a kid, but he signed me in because a brother walked me in there. I sat right there. And then, do you know who Sheikh Dawood was? Do you know his relationship to Farad and Fard, the real one, and the imposter? Do you know that he was the man who owned the Crusader? He was writing the greatest books in the latter part of his life. He died in 1980. He was writing a book through the 70s. He kept telling me, here's the manuscript, because I want to put this book out. Anybody who was around State didn't know. He was upstairs cutting the book, and I was the one upstairs. Me and Rajar Sharif, Salahuddin, Amin, Abdul Wali, all these brothers who still stand for what was right. They listened to him. And he said, I know about the Quran, I know him personally. It wasn't interesting to me. I was not interested in hearing about that. In 1968, 69, and 70. I didn't care about it. I was busy worried about building my own nation. However, He eventually gave me a certificate and made me his successor, a certificate I have with his signature on today, which I was not interested in being a part of the Islamic Mission of America because it housed a whole bunch of Pakistani demons and a whole bunch of confused Negroes who don't know what they want to be. So we broke off and we formed what we refer to as the Nubian Islamic Hebrews. Enough Hebrew to keep the Muslims away and enough Islam to keep the Hebrews away so we could do our own thing. Because we have a right to do our own thing, to be ourselves, to have our own stuff, as I say. So let me take you another step there, then you want to get into it. My apology was met with stupidity. Dr. Khalid and a bunch of other ones started talking about me, calling me a fool. They flashed this thing around, and they took my kindness for weakness. I'm going to take them another step. You know, there's actually 3 of them now, in view of the fact that Wardi Muhammad has introduced a new one. There's a 3rd guy they got coming out of Fuji. They call him Professor Abdullah Muhammad, who died in 1992. I told you about him. He's a new one. There's a 3rd one now. Now, what are you going to say? Wardi Muhammad was raised there. He was the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's son. And his son, Wali, who runs the radio station, and Wardi Muhammad's best friend, who's called John Ramadan. These people got their own mission out there, and they're putting information out about a new Farad who just died in California in 1992. You don't know nothing about that. You don't want to hear the truth. You want to live a lie. Remind me, like I said before, the old story of the Last Temptation movie where Paul comes across the real Messiah and don't want to accept what he had to say. And I got my own Messiah. And Paul went out and started a whole new religion. It wasn't called Christianity, called the Nicene Council. And them didn't mean in the 5th century. And Antioch didn't take place until 300 years after Jesus was gone. They were still called Nazarenes. Let me take you to another level on this if you really want to go. You know, there was a guy. This is the real one, by the way. And his name was Fawad Abdul Ali Muhammad. They spell that F-U-A-D. You got that? All right. Now check this. That's the name he was given at birth. Later on, he had to take on a new name. His name was Abdul Wali Farad Muhammad Ali. This is because he was involved in a whole bunch of illegal things. His birth date was 1891. That's right, 1891. Where was this man born? He was born in Palestine. What was his original nationality? He was Turkish by nationality. What was his religion? His religion was Islam. He was affiliated with the Moorish Science Temple, Pan-Arabism, the Ahmadiyya, and the Ikhwani Muslimin, the Muslim Brotherhood, and any other type of revolutionary group. He was basically anti-America. He was against America, giving Israel the right to exist. His mother was Russian. Her name was Salima Hassan, or Huffan. And her religion was Islam. His father was Syrian. His name was Abdul Ali Qudri al-Ba'id. This is the real one now. Fawad Abdul Ali Muhammad. He spelled it M-O-H-A-M-M-E-D, not with a U. Alright? This guy left Palestine and relocated into Saudi Arabia. There he went to school. He studied there. He studied in Medina in Saudi Arabia. He didn't pop up in the United States until he came up in New Jersey and start bothering the Moorish Science Temple, called the Canaanite Temple at the time, and that was in 1914. He was 23. He got arrested in 1929 for anti-American involvement. The King Saud family of Saudi Arabia, which Fahd was one of his sons. Don't mix Fahd and Fard, which is F-A-H-D, Fahd, who still lives today, who's running Saudi Arabia here in 1996, right? They funded this original one to come here. After funding his education in Medina, Saudi Arabia, at Islamic University. This man was very intelligent. He spoke 16 different languages, they say. I don't know how true it was. I wasn't there. Sheikh Daoud said he spoke fluent Arabic, French, Hebrew, and quite a few other languages. He knew him personally. All right, now, y'all with me? You want me to keep going? Because it gets deep. And it's facts that people don't want to hear. All right, now look, he first appears in 1914. He's around age 23 years in Newark, New Jersey. He starts to go to the Moorish Science Temple, and he's causing a lot of problems. He messes around with them. He's actually on the picture, like I said before, in the upper left-hand corner. You can see a picture of him when he visited Chicago at that temple. Now, he stays around here until about 1917. I guess he's around 26 then. All right? Then he leaves there because Noble Ali wasn't going to tolerate him messing with his followers with this Arabic, something that they didn't have the knowledge of at the time. So he leaves there. Where does he go? He goes to Chicago. He arrived in Chicago around 1919. I guess he's around 28 years old at the time. Okay, y'all with this? Okay, this is stuff that Sheikh Dawood had written in this book. These manuscripts that he passed on to me. Sheikh Dawood was financed and funded by King Faisal, another Saud family, to eliminate that story and that gossip that was taking place because Saudi Arabia was friends with America, and this guy who was a terrorist roaming around, this vision with this Palestinian guy, Fa'ad Abdul Ali Muhammad, was causing problems and saying he was from the noble family of the Quraysh and saying he was from Saudi Arabia and that his name was Fahad. And the Saudi Arabians wanted to get rid of that, so they financed Sheikh Dawood, which I'll get into a little later if you want it. If not, I'll shut up. Because I intended to shut up before, and I mind my business from 1990 to 1995, when your ministers started coming out and trying to talk about me and the nation of Islam. I'm building a bigger nation. I got other things to do. Morocco is on the move. We're growing by leaps and bounds. We're touching people everywhere. But you want to pull and knock on the door and pull me back out of retirement. So here I am. I had much more of that story, but I just didn't put it out because it wasn't my business. I love the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I love everything he stood for. And that's it. I don't care about what the ministers feel, what they think. They're just people like me. But they couldn't leave well enough alone. They wouldn't tell their followers it was a generous suggestion for me to back off, so they went and rubbed me the wrong way and now I'm back out. You want more? You want it? You can see the picture of him in Chicago, right? He visited the Noble Drew Ali Temple. They have a picture of a celebration there, and it appears that he's in the upper left-hand corner. I think the date was October the 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, and 20th, that's right, of 1928, right? And this was the real man, called himself a prophet. Let me establish something right now. Back then in the 30s, to call yourself a prophet was a very common thing. We had Father Divine, a prophet, Noble Drew Ali, a prophet. We had Earlene Gould White, the Seventh-day Adventist, she called herself a prophet. Charles Russell, or rather Ford, knows the name Ford, called himself a prophet. Edgar Casey called himself a prophet. Back in those days, being called a prophet was a very common thing. And in the Shriners' lodges, they reach a certain degree where they're called a prophet. It had nothing to do with the Islamic concept of prophet. Even Dr. Martin Luther King was referred to as a prophet. Noble Drew Ali was called Prophet Noble Drew Ali. It had nothing to do with Nebi and Anbiya, Nebiyin and Nabawa and all of those things that mean so much today that Muslims are in this country from all over the place, pretending they hate the country but living all luxurious, going to Disney World and South America. And now they get down to the strictest things like, what does the word Nebi mean? What did Elijah Muhammad mean? That he was a messenger. Was it a Risala or was it a Rasul or messenger? You know, Elijah Muhammad is whatever he wants to be to us because he came to us. He's ours. He's our stuff. And we can take him and accept him for what we want to be. We don't care what you Arabs think about your desert concept. All right, let me get back on this point now. Do you know that this guy eventually caused himself so much trouble jumping from group to group, getting involved with all these different people, and he was still living in 1921, he was still living in Chicago around age 30, right? He caused so much trouble with the American government that they imprisoned him in San Quentin. And eventually he was murdered in 1929 AD. Same year, Claude, Noble Drew Ali, and a lot of others were murdered. They were eliminating people. Project Aura, they called it. Getting rid of all these problems. Now this man here was so involved and so intense and influenced so many people, but they wanted the plot to go on. They wanted to control the minds of these people. So now he becomes Abdul Wali Farad Muhammad Ali. He joins in with the Ahmadiyya and Ikhwani Muslimin, or the Muslim Brotherhood, up until about 1920, as I said before. And he starts to visit all the different groups around Chicago. You with it? You with me? I don't think they know all this stuff. I think they just think they know. He's playing two ends from the middle. His main objective is to stir confusion in America. Right? They call him Professor Fahd, mispronouncing his name, which is Fahd, which is a Turkish version of the word Fahd, not to be mistaken again, like I said, with Fajr for early morning prayer, or Fahd for obligatory as opposed to Sunnah, not to be mistaken, which was mistaken because the impostor didn't speak Arabic and he passed on to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad a lack of Arabic, and the nation of Islam didn't study Arabic, so they got the names all confused up and got all the characters all confused, and that worked to the benefit of the government at the time they was trying to move everybody. So now he becomes known as Professor Ford, and you can find the name Professor Ford right inside the books of Noble Drew Ali. He makes reference to him there. And Noble Drew Ali, in case you didn't know, existed before the Nation of Islam. He had the star and crescent before the Nation of Islam. He didn't only have a Moroccan flag with a five-pointed star, he also used the five-pointed star and crescent. He had the flags before the Nation of Islam. He used the words sun, moon, and star, and freedom, justice, and equality, and all these things before the Nation of Islam even existed. All right. Now, the Muslim Brotherhood of Egypt, right, they was founded by a guy named Hassan al-Banna, who was really from the Wahhabi sect. influenced by the Saudi Arabians. All right? This Muslim Brotherhood is the same ones today. They call them the Ikhwan. Now they're the same ones responsible for them sheikhs blowing up those buildings. They are the Rabatat, they're the Darul Iftar. They are the spread of all of this terrorism worldwide. This is a plot by these demons. All right? This Sheikh Hassan al-Banna founded his branch of the group in Egypt as the Wahhabi sect in 1745. This plot goes back a long way. He proclaimed himself as the reformer, a form of Mahdi, a form of Messiah to Islam in Egypt. At the time, gradually, them titles drifted away and he just became the great Imam or the great Sheikh. But originally, he considered himself a Mahdi. And he had his own interpretation of Islam and the Quran, a very fanatical interpretation which breeds these demons who feel it's all right to go around and terrorize the world. Right? You understand? This is deep. It came from Egypt over here, from Palestine over here, from Turkey over here, from Morocco over here. A bunch of Caucasians who had invaded the real religion, Islam, when it was in its pristine purity and had poisoned it. Now it's in the hands of a bunch of demons, and then they gave it back to the Nubians as if it was theirs. And they accepted it. Alright, at least when we was Ansarullah, we identified with the Sudan, with people who were Sud, that were Nubian like ourselves. We wasn't going around running up on the Pakistanians, running up on the Pale Egyptians, running up on the Turkish, and running up on the Syrians, running up on the Saudi Arabians. That wasn't our way. And that's another reason why I wasn't liked, and I was always called the racist, because I was running a race for my race. I cared about me. I cared about my kind. That made me the troublemaker. And believe it or not, I got more flack from Nubian brothers in America than I did from any Arabs. Alright, so 2 years after he joined the Muslim Brotherhood, and also involved himself with the Ahmadiyya, which was around 1921, around age 30, this same guy, Fawad Abdul Ali Muhammad, this is the real one I'm talking about, right? And he started causing all kind of problems in American government, right? He joined this anti-American group known as Pan-Arabism, I think they call it, Pan-Arabism. They are a Palestinian group, which is a Hezbollah and all those guys. They're revolutionary movements, typical of their time, right? They were very angry. It was about the fact that the United States was approving the plan for Zionists and was giving them their own state in the United Nations. So they planned to sneak in here and disrupt this country's system. And also, it linked into Nazis, because the Nazis were the only ones who would finance them, because the Arabs didn't have no money. So there is Arab, Turkish, Syrian, Nazi involvement here. Okay, let's go on now. One of their main bases of establishing stuff is in Ann Arbor, Michigan. You can go look it up. They start setting up Islamic universities there. All of these are part of the plot. Now, because of Fawad Abdul Ali Muhammad's involvement with all of these groups, he managed to get himself arrested several times between 1926 and 1929. Upon his final and fatal arrest, which is in 1929, he went to San Quentin, as I said before, the penitentiary in California, where he was put to death. They eliminated him. Later, they came up with a plot to replace him with what I refer to as the imposter. Again, this was the first one who was eliminated. The real one, named, who now they call Master Farad Muhammad. Now let's walk on that. Let's work and see where that goes. The second one, the imposter, he arrives in Los Angeles, California in the year 1914 AD. Wallace Dodd Ford was his real name. All right, W.D. Ford. They also call him the Prophet. Some people call him. All right, now check this out now. I'm going to be running on for a while, so you got to be with me. I'm going to give you a whole history right here. Which later he just became known as Ford. So he became, his real name is Wallace Dodd Ford, a typical British name. Then later on he becomes W.D. Ford. Notice they know he's not W.F. Muhammad like 1 to 36, but W.D. sneaks in there. Why all these name changes? Why all these chicks? Right, people are changing. And y'all talk about my name changes? I'm the same person. Portland, Oregon. That's what the police records state him as. They have him registered as that being his place of birth. All right? He was of American birth, an American citizen, and he was born in the year 1891 AD. Although they list him as 1877. Just look at the picture on the wall behind the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and calculate the date from 1877 to 1930, 1931, all the way to 1995, and see if that man is that age. Wallace Dodd Ford was born 1891 AD, and he, with the help of the FBI, assumed the name of the original, or the personality and birth certificate of the original one who they eliminated. They needed him to infiltrate the organization. Amongst those who didn't know him, he was born in Portland, Oregon. Nationality, white American. Color eyes, brown. Color hair, brown. What was his blood type even? He had type A, they call that an anti-B antibody. Right? That is the blood of a Caucasian, not that of a Nubian. What was his religion? By birth, he was a Mormon by birth. Affiliation, Nazism, FBI, and a double agent. Now this is the Caucasian one, the one that's being circulated as the real one. What was his mother's name? Minnie Z Ford. Where was she from? She was a British living in Polynesia. What was her maiden name? Dejan. What was his father's name? Alfonso Dard Ford. What was he? A merchant seaman of British birth. Did I do my homework? Wallace Dard Ford. He himself married and had a wife named Hazel Burton. They had a son, his name was Wallace Max Ford. He was born September 10th, 1938 in Los Angeles, California. These are things Sheikh Daoud got on record. He brought out the Crusader and all the investigation papers, the police records, the files, the blood type. He did this stuff. He was giving it to me and I didn't want it. I was not interested in it, but it was given to me anyway. I don't want to be the one that makes all this stuff clear. It's not my business. But they made it my business. I said in 1990, I'd give up. Let me go about my business. But no. They got to wake up the sleeping lion and start the name calling. So now you want the rest of the information? I'm going to give you what I was given. You have a right not to believe in what I refer to as mentor Sheikh Daoud, and I have a right not to believe in your interpretation. But mine is backed up with facts, and yours is not producing any facts. Because you can't tell us where your father went, when he was born, where he was born, his mother and father. All you guys are bunch of mythology. I get you with dates, facts, blood type, and even have his fingerprint on record. This can be gotten. You can assess this. But you don't want to hear it. I understand. That's what blind faith is about. All right? So now, once he relocated, he left Portland, Oregon around 1914 at age 23. And he started to reside in California. He started getting arrested there. He was a troublemaker. By 1918 through 1926, he had 3 different arrests from age 27 to 38. Sentenced eventually to life and made a deal with the government. This deal got him his release in 1929 at age 38, about the age of the picture on the wall, when he was to assume the personality of the government. Did the Honorable Elijah Muhammad know the original? No. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad was affiliated with the Ahmadiyya group. He had an Ahmadiyya name, Ghulam Abu Ghulam. Everybody knew that. They knew he wore Ahmadiyya cap. They knew he was involved with the Moorish Science Temple. His followers denied it, but they know he wears a Moorish Science cap. He used the Yusuf Ali Quran first, and it shows him holding picture of the Yusuf Ali Quran, which is a Sunni Quran, and then he switches over to the Ahmadiyya Quran, which is the Quran that Minister Louis Farrakhan used today. There's some affiliation there, which we'll get into. If you don't want me to go on, then I can go home. You want to hear the rest? You want to hear? All right, so I'll do my best. Okay, here. Now, so he first pops up in Chicago at the Moorish Science Temple, claiming to be the reincarnation of Noble Drew Ali. Right, this is July 4th, 1930. Now he's about 39 years old. He disappears around June 30th, around 1934, at age 43. This is when they say he left. Why did he leave? We'll get into that. You see, on August 15, 1959, a newspaper article appeared in Chicago News called The Crusader. The headline listed Master W.D. Fard Muhammad as another of Wallace Dard's false aliases. All right? As a Turkish ex-agent of Adolf Hitler, Nazi, this paper was repeated. The article was put out again around August 1st, 1959. Who do you think was behind these articles? Sheikh Daoud. Who was Sheikh Daoud? A Moroccan Fez-born Nubian who influenced the Moorish Science Temple. I know. I was with him since 1957. Don't say Imam Isa took a shahada on the Luqman and Spacey. You lie. And you know you lie. And I got documents to prove it. But you don't want to see the documents because you'd like to shut my mouth because you don't want to know the truth, because if the truth will make you free enough to come join the ATF. All right, now, who wrote that, they say? It was written by none other than my mentor, Haji Talib Daoud. That was Sheikh Daoud's real name. Many people don't know that. He later changed his name to Sheikh Daoud. He was born, check the date, in 1891, and he died in 1980. And I was there. And his brothers, if they're honest, will come forward and tell you, we was in State Street, we was at the hospital with him. And he pointed and said, you're the man to take over. And he gave me all his manuscripts and said, you do this here. I don't want nothing to do with this. It wasn't my business. I was not concerned with a man that had left in 1934, here I'm back, I'm in 1970. Worrying about after coming out of a 1960 revolution, what to do with my people. All right, now let's check out, as you know him, whose real name was what? Haji Talib Daoud. That's right. All right. He's known later as Sheikh Daoud. Everybody knows. Now, when was he born? 1891. He founded what's referred to as the Islamic Mission in America. He was an avid enemy of the man who was the imposter. He knew he was pretending because he was very close to Fawad Abdul Ali Muhammad. Why? Because both of them were funded by the same family, the Saud family from Saudi Arabia. He knew him. He's the one who suggested he change his name to Abdul Wali Farad Muhammad so that he could stay the heck out of trouble. Sheikh Dawood tried to help this guy, but this guy was just an angry, vicious Arab who kept getting himself in trouble until he finally got himself killed. All right? Want me to go on at this point? All right, I'm getting out of the way here. At the time, Sheikh Dawood owned two businesses. He had his own enterprises, one in Harlem and one in Philadelphia. Right now, in the year 1950, at age 59, he used his own money, because he had used it. Remember, Saudi Arabia was funding him, and he bought out that same paper called the Crusader. Don't believe me? Go check it out. Right? He ordered them same articles to be reprinted about Wallace Ford, who they sometimes refer to as Wali, W-A-L-I. And he had a whole list of names when he got arrested. All right? Now, when he put that article out, he knew this was going to cause a lot of problems. He knew this was going to cause a lot of people in America to be mad at him. But Sheikh Dawood, if you knew him the way I knew him, he didn't care. He was concerned with the truth. What are we concerned with? The truth. Our brothers and sisters that are being led by the wrong people, they don't want us to stop and correct them. While I see people gathering around thinking someone's teaching the truth and they're not telling the whole story, they'll go from Savior's Day to Savior's Day, and it's supposed to be a representation of Farad's Day, and never do you give a full history. You give a mythological history about an original black man who's a white, having a white woman with 7 demons in her, which you can find, like I said before, right in the book of Luke, and cast the demons out and give birth to God, and God had disguised himself. He was an unalike, he didn't look like us. God had disguised himself so that nobody don't beat him up, then he can't help me. How can he help me? He disguised himself. He can come as who he is. I'm standing here, I'm a God in flesh, I'm as who I am. I've been teaching for 1970 and have withstand all of their threats. I've been abused by birds, but they won't come out against me to deal with the truth, because they know I'm right. They know I'm exact at all times. All right, now, a few years later, an article popped up in Los Angeles, California, the Herald Examiner. That's on July 29, 1969, claiming that black Muslim founder is exposed as white. Now, why would Elijah Muhammad take the posture of denying the man in the article that was W.D. Fard, as the article implied? Muhammad Speaks wrote a rebuttal to the article. It was released in Los Angeles, California, at the Herald Examiner, on July 29, 1963, and August 16, 1963, re-released it, right? They answered the claim that the Nation of Islam offered $100,000, right, to clear up the charge if anyone can prove that that man, which is the picture behind the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, is that Nazi or that white man, that Caucasian, who is a phony. Now, until this time, Sheikh Dawood didn't have nothing to say about it. He stopped because it was a fruitless battle. Now, Sheikh had all the investigators, all these people with him. He retrieved the arrest records on Fard. He got all the information. And he even got the arrest record of June 12, 1926, which had the mug shots. That was on the docket, I think it was C1179924. You can go look it up, the Bureau of Criminal Investigation and Identification. After doing an overlay, which is called morphing today, a technique that's used with computers enhancement, and overlaying each picture, I did this myself. I said, whoa, wait a minute. All of these faces are the same people. We start laying faces over faces and the lips and the eyes line up. Something is wrong. These are all the same man. And I begin to wonder, why is the Nation of Islam denying the man that was supposed to be their savior? Because they did not know that he was the imposter. They thought that he was the real one. They were fooled, and it can happen to anybody. You can take it that way if you want to. I'm not going down that path with you. I respect Honorable Elijah Muhammad. He was one of us, raised up amongst us, taught us. He's the one who built that nation. Farah was gone in 1934. Everything that happened from 1934 all the way up until the time Honorable Elijah Muhammad died in 1973, he built that there. He was the man behind that. That's the man I give my respect to. And don't fault me because I don't want to follow some guy who don't look like me. It's not my way. And I'm not taking my people down that way. So I'm saying that to say, if you people will leave us alone, we won't have nothing to do with you. Because we, as HTM, the Nuwapo, the Nubian Nation, we are growing by leaps and bounds. If you don't want to accept that man who's talking about, fine, step back. But hey, Leave me alone so I can be about my stuff and get my job done for my people. We want our own stuff. We have our own language, our own culture, our own dances, our own food. Leave us alone. We'll leave you alone. But tell your ministers, I said, let's let it rest, because this is deeper than they know. Much deeper. Let me move on to something else now.